Welcome to another best Limitless and Wildcard Team video rolled into one. I'll first talk about the Limitless team and then move on to the Wildcard at the very end. There aren't too many changes between both of those teams, which was quite similar to Matchday 11. However, between Matchday 11 and Matchday 12, there are quite a few differences, which obviously depend on form and a few other factors. But let's get straight into this. Talk about the best goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and attackers. Let me know if you would change anything. I'll also talk about the captaincy, which will be very similar to my team selection video. There are no surprises about the goalkeepers. I would definitely go for Alisson and Ederson. You may go about it a bit differently, and I think there is definitely a case to be had to go for Courtois over Ederson, and I would expect both teams to score in that game, but ultimately I still prefer Manchester City's defence, therefore I would personally go for Ederson. However, Courtois is a very good alternative. I definitely wouldn't go for Geronimo Rulli over Alisson though, because I would back Liverpool to score more goals than Villarreal and possibly keep a clean sheet there as well. I just don't see a scenario where Villarreal keep a clean sheet, so therefore I would go for both Brazilians yet again, and I've got them both in my team selection as well, so I'm very happy with that. And ultimately heading into the final, of course, you don't really want to have two goalkeepers like this. Unless you're on a Limitless, then it doesn't really matter. But otherwise, with a wild card or with normal transfers, you want to only have one goalkeeper in the final. However, having these Brazilians in the semi-finals is a luxury, and it really boosts your chances of getting a clean sheet. So I would go for the two Brazilians once again, and I think they have a really good chance of a clean sheet. In defence, I definitely would go for two Liverpool defenders at least. You've already got Alisson as well, so that's free defensive coverage. Remember, you can't have more than 6 players from a single team, unfortunately. Otherwise, I think most of us would stack up on Liverpool with 7 or even 8 players. So I've gone for Robertson and Trent. However, if the Scottish left-back is benched for Tsimikas, I would go for Konate in his place. I think that's a really good substitution for him. And then you may be wondering, where is Aymeric Laporte? You could go for him instead of Ruben Dias, and actually the Portuguese centre-back is even better in terms of ball recoveries per 90 minutes. So let me know who you would prefer between Dias and Laporte. For my normal team, because Laporte is cheaper, has better goal threat, and has been very consistent throughout the knockout stages, I would go for him. But on a Limitless, you could maybe go about it a bit differently. However, talking about differences or percentage ownership, Dias is actually higher than Laporte. So if you want to go for someone a bit less highly owned, then maybe Laporte is the way to go. So I'm quite torn about that one. I think it doesn't really matter too much either way. They should score quite similarly, but both of them are very good options. However, what I am convinced about, apart from having two Liverpool defenders, is getting João Cancelo. He is the best City defender and probably the best City player alongside Kevin De Bruyne in UCL Fantasy. And as for Eder Militao, you don't really need to go for him. If you don't back Real Madrid to keep a clean sheet, then maybe go for someone else. But ultimately, he is probably one of the better defenders for Real Madrid. You can maybe go for Mendy as well, to be fair, who got an assist. And he also set up Vinicius Jr., but it didn't count as an assist in UCL Fantasy because of the solo run and that new rule that they introduced, I think, last season and also in Euro 2020 Fantasy Football. So let me know who you would go for from Real Madrid if you would indeed go for any of their defensive coverage. But ultimately, in terms of the defense, I would go for something like this. The midfield is identical to what it was in Matchday 11, so no changes really here. And once again, the midfield is where you're really going to make that difference in terms of the extra money at your disposal from the Limitless, and you can just have whatever player you want. So De Bruyne, Salah and Modric are players that I would recommend on the wildcard and normal transfers as well. But what you could also afford on top of these 3 players and Karim Benzema and these premium defenders is getting the likes of Mane and Riyad Mahrez. I would highly recommend them, and I would still go for a Real Madrid midfielder, and for me Modric is the pick of the bunch. Obviously you may think about it differently and go really big for City and go for Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva, etc. They are definitely good options as well, but ultimately I still think Mahrez is the best of the lot UCL fantasy wise. Is he worth that extra money? Maybe, maybe not. I think I would have said yes heading into Matchday 7 when he was doing really well. As for now, I think there's definitely debate to be had to go for one of the others. But then again, Mahrez should have scored really big in the first leg of the semi-finals against Real Madrid. As for Sadio Mane, he scored. He was assisted by Salah to open up the scoring against Villarreal. And I think he's a great option. I think he will start. Obviously, if he doesn't, and that would be quite a surprise, then maybe go for someone else in that case. And I'll probably go for a City midfielder. But I think ultimately I would go for Salah and Mane, and you cover 2 of the best players Liverpool have and the best chances of a goal scorer in that game. So that is how I would go about it in terms of the midfield. De Bruyne and Salah for me are non-negotiables. I would definitely go for them. But the likes of Mane and Mahrez are big luxuries. If you maybe prefer another City midfielder over Mahrez, then that's definitely a debate to be had. But ultimately I would go for this midfield 5, and there's a lot of different captaincy options in here. Forget about Benzema, he has to be in your team no matter what. It doesn't matter which chip you're using or if you're not using a chip, Benzema has to be in your team. And for me, he's probably the best captaincy option on the second day, on the Wednesday. And as for the first day, who would I go for? Probably Salah or Mane. Another one you could consider is Kevin De Bruyne for the Wednesday. But ultimately, other than those four, I think I would just keep it quite nailed on and locked in and just focus on which players you're getting in. So for example, Vinicius Jr., I would double up on Real Madrid attack. They're at home. Vinicius Jr. has been one of the best forwards this season, especially in La Liga, and he scored a really good goal against Manchester City. And those two are probably the most likely to score a goal and bring Real Madrid to the final once again. Now, Diaz or Jota, that's going to be an interesting one. Whoever starts, I would probably go for them. But another player that isn't here is Gabriel Jesus, who is in my normal team selection. So he's another one that could do really well. I'm just not that sure if he's going to start compared to these lot, especially the likes of Diaz or Jota. You're going to get the lineups for Liverpool versus Villarreal, so that's a luxury. And as for Benzema and Vinicius, they start every single game for Real Madrid when fit. So that should be fairly simple. Ultimately, players like Benzema, De Bruyne and Salah, for me, they have to be in your team. The same goes for Cancelo and a Liverpool fullback and possibly one of Alisson or Edison. The rest could be malleable and you could change things about a little bit. But ultimately, this is the 11 or the 15-man squad I would go for on a Limitless. Now let me show you the best wildcard team, which is going to be very similar to this one, of course, because like I keep on saying, the Limitless is more useful and you gain more from it and you can make a big difference between your budget and also the kind of cap you're going to have and the squad value from your Limitless team in the earlier stages of the competition when you have more premiums and more options to choose from. But ultimately, if you still have it, I would use a Matchday 12 right now because in the final, I just don't think you'd benefit from it as much as you would here ultimately. It could be team dependent, of course, so that won't apply to every single one of you. But ultimately, let me show you now the few differences there are between this and the best wildcard team. As you can see, we have the same two goalkeepers, Alisson and Edison. The defence as well, we've gone for Laporte instead of Ruben Diaz and Konate instead of Andrew Robertson. As for the midfield, we've got Fabinho instead of Mane and Foden instead of Mahrez. And the rest is pretty much the exact same. Just wait for the lineup, see if Diaz or Jota start. Same goes for Robertson or Konate. Either way, with the squad value I have and also this team structure, you wouldn't be able to go for Robertson over Konate unless you make some other sacrifices. But some of you may have even more team value than me. That ultimately depends on how you kind of got onto these players early and they rose in price more. That's pretty much how the team value works in this game. And the price rises and falls happen after every single match day. After the deadline passes, they change the prices and then you won't have to worry about it until the next deadline pretty much. So it's not like an FPL where there's dynamic pricing and it changes pretty much every single day potentially. But that's pretty much how I would go about the best wildcard and Limitless team. The captain's the same thing. I'd go for Salah on the first day in the wildcard team, and on the second day I'd probably favour Benzema just about over Kevin De Bruyne, but both of them are fantastic options in their own right. Let me know if you would change anything and if there are any differentials that you really back and that maybe someone I haven't discussed. For example, Danjuma maybe deserves more love. Maybe you could go for someone like Raul Albiol. There's quite a few players still, but I think ultimately we've got fewer to choose from then, maybe in the quarterfinals, round of 16 and the group stages. So right now the template is going to be stronger than ever. So pretty much it's going to be harder to gain rank from now on, but still possible, especially if you make some smart decisions. And there are still some 50-50 calls. For example, Vinicius Jr. versus Gabriel Jesus, Diaz or Jota, etc. And a few others across the pitch. Even Diaz Laporte could be another case of that. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss a single upload or stream. There's going to be a deadline stream on Tuesday where we're going to check the Liverpool versus Villarreal lineups and then lock in our teams live whilst answering all your questions and comments as we always do. Be sure to get this video to 100 likes and also let's get to 11,000 subscribers. We can definitely do that, and there's going to be more F1 fantasy content throughout the season, and especially during the summer when the football is over. We've already released a Race Week 5 team selection video ahead of Miami, so check that out, as well as a how to play guide. So if you're new to the game, you're unsure of anything, that should assist all your queries. The same goes for more FPL content throughout the week, including a best free hit team for Double Game Week 36. That should be very interesting, and much more. We did a reaction stream recently. Check that out. There's so much on this channel, and we've been very consistent over the last few months, probably over the last year or so, but especially in the last month where we're probably matching the amount of videos and streams compared to the amount of days there are really. But thank you very much. I hope you enjoy all the content. Hopefully you enjoy the season finale for UCL Fantasy and FPL. Enjoy the football as always. Hopefully you get those green arrows you want, and I'll see you next time.